Oh wow.
I think one of the many reasons why I love Barry so much is that it lives up to expectations without you even having any. The show is concluded with its final and fourth season, and I gotta say, I was completely blown away. I was expecting something completely different, and yet I got the absolute opposite of that. Yet I still came out satisfied, and overall understood the whole point of Barry. The characters in the show are nothing more than unredeemable arseholes that kinda get everything they deserve, for better or for worse. A lot of people were worried that the finale of Barry wouldn't be able to live up to expectations due to so much story being left to tell within the span of 30 minutes, but that time frame has always been something Barry has exceeded at. While the show doesn't skip over, it more just gets to the point and doesn't draw itself out. They put these characters in these situations in sort of like a realistic setting, and it doesn't overstay its welcome either. With 4 seasons and 32 episodes, it actually surprisingly gets through an awful lot. Considering this show as well as a mixed bag of genres, we get great elements of dark comedy, thriller, psychological drama, and crime. It sounds like a recipe for disaster for most shows, but actually Barry is the only show I've watched in a very long time that has just exceeded in every season. Every season has pretty much just been a banger. Because I think Barry is just a show that knows exactly what kind of story it wants to tell. Now, the criticisms of Season 4 is that it's not as funny as the first 3, but I feel like Season 4 is funny, it's just more visual. It's not more relying on its dialogue, but more of the settings these characters are placed in, because Barry literally goes into a gun store, buys tons of guns, straps them on his back, walks out with children around him, gets into his car in a hilariously difficult way. That, to me, is just hilarious. Like, how was that not adding commentary on gun violence? That was just so easy to do. And in the end, Barry doesn't even end up using the guns because everybody's dead by the time he gets there. Now, I enjoy the one-shot action sequence, and I think it works for the finale of the show, but there's always going to be a little part of me that would love another massacre scene with Barry.
White boy, Lululemon tracksuit. Do you stand?
Barry?
Shit!
I mean, the dude is just so ruthless. But that's the thing about this show. Every time there would be action, or let alone even a single gunshot, it felt so incredibly real. It becomes dramatic without it being stereotypically dramatic. We don't get any like close-ups on gore or anything like that. It just tells it how it is. I mean, when the finale begins, you expect Barry to be going on a massacre in revenge to get back his son and his wife, but the opposite happens. In fact, people start fighting each other over Barry, instead of Barry being the center of the conflict. And I actually think it's more telling that Barry's actions has led to other people fighting due to his choices. We've got both NoHo Hank and Fuchs here trying to tell each other who they are. They're trying to define themselves, but then as soon as the fight breaks out, they just revert back to their old selves. I tried to understand what Fuchs was actually trying to do here with Barry's son. I think he was just trying to prove to Barry that he's not useless, and I'm not just some worthless piece of shit that you think I am, but he really is a piece of shit. While I won't call this Fuchs' redemption arc, because while he still runs away expecting Barry to probably end up killing him, even though they have a little moment with each other, it's Fuchs' way of going, well, I put us into this mess by getting into business with NoHo Hank, and for you to not kill me, I'm gonna save your son. And well, realizing he's not got any guys left, he just kind of wanders off into the dark, and he's probably gonna be remaining hidden for the rest of his life. I mean, Fuchs had so many opportunities to get out of this and enjoy his life and sort of leave Barry alone, but this relentlessness to sort of be this father figure that he could never be to Barry was just kind of hilarious in itself, how every time he would fail. I think the most depressing death is NoHo Hank's. The way how he went out like that was just, well, yeah, you kind of got what you deserved there for what you did to your boyfriend Cristobal, but it's like, I kind of wanted something better for him regardless of all the spineless shit that he's done. I mean, even he couldn't admit to himself what he did to Cristobal in the end in sort of a way, and the kind of last thing he can sort of do is just to bow out with Cristobal. Like, he probably should have died with him that night because he just couldn't let go of his old life, but NoHo Hank was kind of put into a difficult position due to the family that he was raised in. With his guilt over profiting over Cristobal's death and his ideas, the way how he held his hand at the end on the statue was just kind of like their way of being together again. And you know what? I'm kind of at peace with that. I think the only thing I would have loved to have seen was sort of like a final confrontation between Barry and NoHo Hank, because every time them two would be together on screen, it would just be a great comedy duo. And it's also somewhat sad of how their friendship really, well, friendship the lack thereof, the way how their interaction ended. With the time jump of season 4, Sally has been doing nothing more than playing a part, and for her to finally admit to herself, to her son, that she's a piece of shit, and yeah, they've done a lot of, stupid shit and horrible things, it was just kind of like satisfying to see, like that performance with it just focusing on her back, and then she finally turns around and tells her son. It was just a really great performance from the actor here, Sarah Goldberg. She did a great performance here. I hope in anything she gets a reward for that. The way how this show has always remained its focus on the business of acting, on wanting to become an actor, even in the darkest season of season 4, how it was still able to incorporate elements of both poking fun at the television and movie industry, especially Hollywood, by wanting to make a biopic over the events of Barry up to the point before the time jump, has always been impressive to me, because yes, it's often discussed in how Hollywood is so quick to jump on the tragic events of other people's lives in order to make a profit from it. And I think one of the saddest characters to see downfall in the series of Barry is, of course, Gene Kusanov, played by the, Oscar performance worthy of Henry Winkler. He does such a fantastic job, often given times with no dialogue, with just his face expression being everything you need to know about what he's going through. I can't believe how Gene went out like this. It was absolutely kind of shocking and sad to see, but then he also kind of perfectly predicted how he would actually go out in the show. And, well, the whole show in general.
I'm trying not to overwhelm you, Barry. I'm trying to give you the view from 10,000 feet before we dive in and break it down scene by scene. So, scene 1, loss.
It's done.
Scene 2, you shit in a pie.
So, relief?
No, I think it's a little more nuanced than that. I think it's about vengeance.
Okay.
And then, scene 3, whoopsie, you eat the shit pie.
Freeze! Drop the fucking gun! Berkman, drop the fucking gun! Drop it! Berkman, drop the fucking gun! Drop it! Drop the fucking gun or we fucking shoot!
Comeuppance. He who seeks revenge digs 2 graves, Barry. It's a tale as old as time.
Damn.
And then there's scene 4 about the little girl who's drowning, but you don't have to save her.
Yeah, because I taught her how to swim.
Yeah. And I think you only have one line, which is...
No fucking way.
No fucking way.
Oh, wow.
You know what? Let's save that for later.
Oh.
This is excellent writing. This is something I have wanted from the show in such a long time, which is why I've been so gripped to this series, even though I only started watching it a month ago. What makes the show brilliant to me is on the first watch, you're like surprised and shocked what is happening, and then you watch it a second time, and you still have that same feeling from the first watch, only you don't feel dumb, you just feel like, wow, okay, because I took all this in and really absorbed this world, I didn't want to predict anything for the characters because I just wanted the writers to just tell a show without having any expectations. I find shows that are somewhat toxic of fans demand this to happen or this to happen with characters X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, I wanted to watch this show and just let the camera roll. Tell the story you want to tell. I have no expectations, and I think that in the end is actually what made me enjoy the show a lot more. Because when you do that, it makes you go, oh wow. And that, ironically, is what I said at the end of this series. In the show, Gene was presented as sort of a failed actor. He started off big, but then at the end he kind of really lost his edge. Or more like he lost his name in Hollywood, that no one wanted to hire him anymore. But then for it to fail once again, with the murder of Janice, his downfall and sort of depression since then, that he just can't seem to catch a break, not even with his son, who at first doesn't want anything to do with him, and then he does, but then Gene mistakenly thinks that his son is Barry coming to kill him, so he shoots his son, and it's just tragic to watch Gene go through so much tragedy, But at the end, his ego got the better of him. The idea of Mark Wahlberg being in the biopic really got him going again. At first advocating against the movie due to his wife Janice, but then that ego crept back again, something that he always desperately wanted to be recognized once again in Hollywood. But that's the whole point of Barry. With just a few mistakes that you can make, the whole world can turn on you. The first time Gene and Janice's brother Jim worked together to stop Barry was such a satisfying scene that you didn't think anything could go wrong from there, with Barry now being in prison, with him eventually being prosecuted, but then obviously Barry breaking out, and then Gene fleeing because he thinks that Barry's going to kill him, making certain choices and decisions that makes Gene look more and more guilty. And finally, what turned everybody on Gene was him neglecting to mention the money that Barry would give to him. This makes Jim convinced that he was actually involved in Janice's murder. The world now thinks that Barry was actually a victim in all of this, when actually it was Barry torturing Gene this whole time. And it gets to the point where Gene's just fed up with it, with the whole world turning on him, that he's got nothing left to live for. But that's a part of the world as well. If he had just let Barry confess, like Tom, of all people, an absolute nobody, like Barry even says himself, who the fuck are you, convinced Barry to turn himself in favor for his friend Gene, who he was actually about to just run out on. But no, Barry got what he deserved for the heinous shit he did, but at the same time, it couldn't help but feel like, damn, we were so close for Barry getting the justice he deserved. But no, the ego of Gene got the better of him once again, gave up, and shot Barry in the head. With Barry's dream wanting to become an actor and be remembered, he got exactly that in the end, but it was all based on a lie. And now Barry's son believes that his dad is actually a hero, which I suppose works out on the trauma of that kid. He's not really going to be scarred, but now that's going to be based on a lie as well. It's really heartbreaking, because Gene is one of my favourite characters in this whole series. Henry Winkler really brings out his game, despite the character being incredibly selfish and stupid at times. There was still a lot of heart to that guy, where you wanted him, of all characters, to have a redemption arc. I mean, the fact that they told the future of Barry within the world of Barry through the biopic was just brilliant, because it's not us getting the information, it's the world of Barry getting that information. We are the third lens of an overall story. But yeah, I just find Barry funny as fuck. It made me laugh pretty much every episode, with characters like NoHo Hank that I'll never forget about, with Gene Cousineau being one of my favourite Henry Winkler performances. I'm going to be watching this show over and over again in the next few years to come. I mean, with the love between Barry and Gene, and how it was one of the only relationships I didn't want to sour. I wanted that connection between these two to stay together, because it was that father and son, dynamic you wanted Barry to get away from Fuchs and go into Gene's hands, because Gene will look after him better. But with Barry, the way how it's just able to turn itself into a bigger mess by him going to the ideal father instead of his worst father. People make choices that impact other people, and it just gets messier way quicker than you expect it to be, and it kind of goes for the same in real life. You do one mistake, another character will do another that will conflict you, and it will just become this mud pile of drama. This is without a doubt one of Bill Hader's best roles ever, and he really gives it all out, writing and directing almost every episode of the show. I'm just really impressed by his creativity and the lengths he will go to make the show just kind of stand out from the rest. The way how the show also talks about mental health issues without actually directly saying anything, the way how it just portrays how certain characters, such as the state of mind of Barry, the way how he acts and feels, and the way how other characters act and react to it. Often sometimes being really caring, then sometimes often being really dismissive. It was just something I could really relate to sometimes. You are the only person who truly ever knows how you feel. And seeing how a character on screen blows up in a way, or express a certain feeling that you can relate to, watching it on screen just kind of gives you a certain comfort that you're not the only one. You're not obviously going to commit the actions of someone like Barry, but when you see a character like Barry blow up and seeing it all kind of collapse and break down, it kind of gives you a lot of commentary without it actually saying anything. I feel like TV shows and movies are trying to say too much now and kind of appease the wrong kind of message towards people and how they should act and behave. And Barry just kind of encapsulates how the world is unforgiving Sure, Barry is a depressing tale of characters reaching their inevitable downfall, but at the same time, it kind of makes you feel better about your life, how you're not in their situations, but at the same time, you can still react and sort of feel how another character is feeling, but you're just glad that you're not in those circumstances. This show is so under the radar that it's actually a crime it's not getting talked about enough. I feel like we're slowly seeing a Breaking Bad effect where people are just starting to get into the series as it's just ending, which I kind of think works out for Barry because Barry never wanted to be a long drawn out season. Bill Hader knew he was going to do 4. Like, I can get through Barry a lot quicker with just 32 episodes, with each episode being 30 minutes long, while Breaking Bad it'll take me a lot longer to rewatch. While that's okay for Breaking Bad's favor because tonally that's going in a completely different direction, but with Barry I can get that same amount of excitement as I would get in Breaking Bad. The only difference is I can get through Barry quicker while still having the same experience or the excitement feeling I would get from a series like such as Breaking Bad. With the rarity of television these days not living up to really good quality, with the fact that we had Barry was sort of a blessing in disguise. I'm so glad I found it. It was so under the radar. As an actor myself, I would love to be in a series like Barry. It's something that Henry Winkler is so proud of and he's going to be remembered for, and I think this is his definitive role, and I think it goes for the same as the other actors as well. One of the hidden gems within the television and film industry is comedic actors breaking out into dramatic roles, because while I feel like comedians have a better way of portraying the dark side of how a human being might be feeling, the fact that most actors in the show are comedians really goes to show that each actor has stood out and proved their A game. It's just a series that's sort of like, wow, for this era of the television world we are living in, this stands out because it's not stereotypical, it's not predictable, it's just its own formula, its own flow, and I hope in the future we get similar shows similar to Barry that takes these risks while at the same time not bowing down to these sort of expectations that audiences will have. And overall, it's funny as fuck. This is one of the funniest shows I've watched in a long time. I wouldn't say I'm hard to impress, but I laughed out loud in moments of Barry throughout the entire series, and that is a rarity. And yeah, overall, Barry was wow. Barry may be over, but NoHo Hank will always be an icon.
Let's ride.